आओ जी आओ जी आओ जी
ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਮਾਝਾ ਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਖੂਬਸੂਰਤ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਦਾ ਮਹੀਨਾ ਸਰਹੱਦ ਅਨਹਦ ਨਾਦ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਖੂਬਸੂਰਤ ਫੈਸਟੀਵਲ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡਾ 7ਵਾਂ ਦਿਨ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਗੁਰੂਪਦੇਵ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਰ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸਪੀਕਰਸ ਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਰਸਮੀ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਤਾਰਫ ਕਰਾਨ।
Most welcome to another session of Sanjha Punjab under the auspices of Majha House. Today we have got a novelist, a storyteller, Anirudh Kala. And interviewing him would be an equally eminent writer himself, Amandeep Sandhu. Amandeep Sandhu has done two very famous books of fiction which have been nominated for a number of prizes. He will be today exploring this book, 2.5 Rivers by Anirudh Kala. Kalaji is basically a psychiatrist based in Ludhiana, but he also at times likes to dabble in writing, and he has already done one major book, The Unsafe Asylums, which is a collection of stories. And most importantly, he is concerned with Punjab and its trauma, the trauma that probably people went through when we had partition. And this present book that we are going to discuss today is 2.5 Rivers, which relates to the times when we had this Punjab problem. This is basically a story of a doctor who is caught in the crossfires of religion and terrorism. The title itself tells there is kind of an unspoken reference to the larger Punjab that we once upon a time had. And we will leave this to Amandeep Sandhu and Anirudh Kalaji to have this book presented to us in more details. Over to Amandeep Sandhu, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Sat Sri Akal ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ. So I can't do this talk without mentioning that Dr. Kala is one of my gates to Punjab. We have been friends for about 11 years now, I think. We met when Dr. Sareen called Daman me to speak about our books on madness, and Dr. Kala was hosting the session. And since then, a friendship and actually a mentorship has developed. Dr. Kala has been guiding me through my journeys in Punjab. It's now 2 years, so I can say that most of the book, most of the references to drugs and madness in Punjab journey through fault lines are from Dr. Kala's clinics and respite home. And thank you very much, Preeti, for giving me the opportunity to introduce this book. But given our relationship, I will take a little liberty here, which normally we try to remain polite about in such talks. But Dr. Kala understands, I understand, and Dr. Kala gives us the reason to start this talk from this point, which I'm going to. The book is about militancy, it is about caste, and it is about a psychiatrist spiraling into depression and mania, actually. Towards the end of the book, the doctor asks the young girl, Samshi, a question. And this is the reason why, when I saw the draft of the book 4 years back, I told Dr. Kala, yes, you've done one very important book, but this has to be pursued. And I'm so glad it is now out in print. I'll read from the book. On this autumn evening, when the sky is full of stars and the river has submerged half of the Sarkanda grass, she asks me, she is Shamsi, what caste are you from? He's going to speak at a convention of farm laborers the next morning. I have always been uncomfortable around this question and give my stock reply. I hate identities. And that, Dr. Saab, is the difference, she says. You have the privilege to hate identities and say it too. And that privilege comes from your caste. If I said I hate identities, I would be told, of course you do. You're a chamar. Therefore, I cannot even say that. Not in this birth. I hope that I'm born a Jat or a Brahmin next time, just for the sake of this one privilege. The privilege of being able to say I hate identities. Right now, I have to hug my identity close to my chest and tell others like me to do the same. Of course, it is about caste, but given the dynamics of Punjab for the last, 75 years, even earlier actually, and what we all have seen in the militancy years, which already is 50 years old now. The reason I really put my weight behind this book is because Dr. Kala is doing something very important. Most of the narration we have about militancy in Punjab, I don't know for what reason, comes from Sikh people. It's only recently that an ex-governor in 84, B.D. Pandey's book has come out. Dr. Kala is not Sikh. He is from another religion. And that he is talking these things about Punjab, I think, lend greater authenticity to Punjab's experience about what it went through. It was not about religion. It was us about Punjabian. And that is why I'll ask Dr. Kala to. And also, when I saw the draft, it was called Dancing Girl of Harappa. Why is it now called 2.5 Rivers? What is the novel about?
Well, the novel is about, as you said correctly, that it is about two major fault lines of Punjab intersecting with each other. The caste and the religious, if I can use the word fundamentalism, the form of which we saw in 84. I take 84 as the median year of that decade and a half, because there was a phase before it and there was a phase after it, and the two were qualitatively different. As far as the caste is concerned, it has been it is a leftover from Hinduism. Formal Sikh religion is just about 300 years old, and informal Sikh religion, starting with Guru Nanak, is not even 500 years old yet. And it's a baggage of thousands of years dating back to Hinduism. It will take some time. I feel that it is getting better, but is it getting significantly better, fast enough? I don't know. I don't think so. Also, many times we, at least people who aren't that old enough, do not remember that the Sikh militancy was not actually the first militancy in the history of modern Punjab. Just a decade before, there had been a leftist insurgency, a Dalit insurgency predominantly, although it wasn't totally Dalit. There were some Jat men with small holdings or poor Jats, you can say. So in a short period, Punjab has already had both a left insurgency and a far-right religion-based insurgency. And that doesn't actually bode very well. This goes to the inflammability of passions. Also, caste is part of the insurgency, at least, like I said, it was part of the first insurgency. And the police atrocities, the worst form of police atrocities, were reserved during the Metropolitan insurgency for Dalits. That again is not very commonly talked about. As far as the name is concerned, yes, uh, I had liked that name, the Dancing Girl of Hadappa, but then it was brought to my attention by friends that there is a very famous, iconic artifact. It is a bronze statue. It's called Dancing Girl of Mohenjo-Daro, and it was too similar, so we had to let it go. Then it was called Uchapind Sanghol, which actually I liked a lot, and which Preeti had suggested, and the publishers didn't like it because they thought people would think that it is a translation work from Punjabi. So finally it's the publishers who got to decide. So that's the story of the names.
No, but you're also saying something very important through this title. No, I mean, I love Dancing Girl, and Dancing Girl plays a role in the book, a very important role in the book.
Yeah.
We have still not told the story of the book, so we'll come to that. But you do something very, very important. I mean, I think we in this Punjab need to also realize that we are really 2.5 rivers, and somehow when we keep calling ourselves a land of 5 rivers, we remain, I think, a little dissociated with reality, if we have to say
Yes.
it in a psychiatrist term, so how it plays on our minds is also important. But give a brief about what is the story about, what really happens in the story.
Well, the story of the book is about a young Dalit couple, very young Dalit couple. The backdrop is the decades of 80s and early 90s, which was the period of Sikh militancy. And the narrator is a Hindu doctor who is psychiatrically quite unwell. He's depressed. He has been recently divorced. Now, as you said about the religious identity of the persons who are being talked about and the person who is narrating, there are only three major categories, demographic categories in Punjab. One is the Dalit, the second is the Sikh, and the third are the Hindus. So if somebody has to talk about as a narrator, narrate the story of the Dalits and the Sikh militants, it had to be a Hindu. And that is how the identity of the narrator becomes that of Hindu. And to go and live on that isolated spot on a riverbank in those times, a normal person couldn't have done it. It had to be, somewhat a risk-taking person to the extent of madness. So that is how, in my mind, the roles were defined.
By normal, we mean a Sikh person couldn't have done it. He would have been definitely seen as,
No, the Sikh person may not have been objective enough. It may not have been perceived as objective enough.
No, I'm saying even living on that isolated house on the bank of the river, where he sees dead bodies floating, I mean, in those times, realistically, I think it was impossible for a Sikh person to go and live in a house like that.
Yes, true.
In fact, when the police is using the premises in the night, that becomes suspicious.
Yes.
Yeah. I would. Okay, this is more personal about the work you do, and we'll come back to the book again. But Doctor, how many years has it been? 40, 45 years you've been practicing?
Yes, 40, more than 40. Yes.
That's like my lifetime, And I have been seeing psychiatrists for that long. And of course, mother's context and all that. I always feel you psychiatrists see so much drama, but it almost never comes out, internal drama in people's heads, So how do you as a psychiatrist process this drama? I mean, do you forget the cases when you go back to sleep at night? Do you make notes and leave it there? What do you do? How can you take so much, in that sense, again, dissociation from reality, a daily dose of it? I mean, and I've seen you meeting multiple patients. I've attended your sessions, so we know what we are talking
Mm.
about.
See, I'll tell you what we don't tell people often. What we do tell people often very glibly is that, oh, we are professionals and we have to detach ourselves. And so we just switch it off after the clinic and go home and, sleep and lead our own life. But actually, it cannot work like that. We are not robots. We are flesh and blood, and we try to process it. We Many times we succeed in getting detached enough, but one is never 100% detached. Secondly, uh, many times we can't. Many times we psychiatrists can't. Mental health professionals cannot, and that is why mental health professionals have one of the highest rates of psychiatric morbidity.
Really?
Yes, even in the suicide rate of different professionals, we figure quite high up on the list. So no, it's like I said that it's not always possible, but most of the times it is.
Hmm. So, is there an element of autobiography in the book, or could you do it completely from case studies or imagination?
No, it wasn't imagination either, or nor was it a purely autobiographical as far as the details are concerned, but it was experiential because, uh, like other Punjabis, I lived through those times. My family lived through those times. My patients lived, my friends and my patients, most of all. And it was, the patients kept on coming, even during these days. And that is, one of the perks of being a psychiatrist is that people come to you with stories. I mean, they pay you for listening to the stories. And uh, for a psychiatrist or for other doctors also, uh, the most important source of information from the community is their patients, not the newspapers, not the drawing room discussions, because they're the ones who come and tell you what happened yesterday, what happened day before yesterday. And so, to that extent, it was experiential. One knew, everybody knew, all doctors knew. And not just that, there were militants who were coming to the clinics. I mean, they had their problems, medical problems, not just psychiatric, but psychiatric also. We knew that they were militants. Militants knew that we know that they are militants, but it was never. That was an unsaid code that nobody mentioned anything because that would have been problematic.
And the police also came.
Police came to many hospitals, doctors. I very clearly remember a major hospital. I had gone to meet a friend, and I saw a doctor being dragged from inside the hospital through the visit OPD on a charge of abetting terrorism. Yes, there were many doctors who sort of, the charge was that you treated them, you harbored them for so many days. You knew that it was a gunshot wound. You didn't report it. All of that.
But how do you deal with it? I mean, the Hippocratic Oath says that you have to deal with the patient.
The law of the land, particularly the law of the land of those times, it also said that if that is happening, you have to inform.
Hmm. Did the police come with the mental health issues to you? to you
The
or to
police?
others, to
Oh,
other
yes.
psychiatrists?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Police came all the time. Police were coming before also, during that time also, and afterwards also. Police
Was
comes
it
up.
only sleeping pills or something more than that?
No, no, all sorts of illnesses, depression, paranoid symptoms, sleep disturbances, anxiety, job stress. They are very medically and psychiatrically, they are very unhealthy people. They live the lifestyle that they lead. No holiday, perpetually on duty, can be called at any time. Highly stressful situations, the scoldings from the boss in not a very uncivilized or not a very civilized language. So police had their share of problems.
No, it's very fascinating because I mean, the second book of mine was on 1984, and the only person, I mean, of course, you did the third book inauguration, but at that time in Delhi, I could only think of Dr. Sareen, who knows both sides. You know, like
Yes.
who knows the victims of the pogrom and who knows the perpetrators of the pogrom. You know, like so. Yeah, okay. Just moving on a little bit, because the novel is about caste and predominantly about caste and how this couple, Bheem and Shamsi, they find to some extent relief when they go off to Bombay, but then they come back here. They actually are moving in and out of Punjab because Punjab is on fire. But again, this question is now becoming much more and more important. Uh, uh, with the new chief minister taking over, suddenly there was India bursting out saying, but Sikh religion is egalitarian. You know, how do you, how did you address the caste in this book by choosing a Dalit protagonist? I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a little hint. It's like Shamsi's stage fright. It does not happen in Mumbai. It does not happen anywhere else, but it happens when she has to perform in front of judges.
Yes. And she because she dances in those weddings and she says that Jats are the only ones who can afford these such sort of weddings, costly weddings. And yes, Sikh religion is egalitarian. It is, I personally think it is very egalitarian as compared to the mainstream, many mainstream religions, Hinduism or others. And the baggage, as I said, it's actually from the Hinduism, thousands of years of that, of which Sikhism, is sort of branched off from Hinduism. Whether enough has been done consciously, I do not know. Things have improved, but not out of any serious attempt. The things have improved organically. What has happened is that the Vedas, because of the increase in population, the population has overgrown the Vedas and spilled out into the village. Not because there is an attitudinal change. Most of the villages still have two gurdwaras. And of course, when you ask people, they say, no, they can come to your gurdwara now, and some of them do, and we don't throw them out. But the question is that, yes, they may be coming now, some of them, but do you go to their gurdwara? That's the point. So yes, it is an egalitarian religion, but this still stays. And like you said, that Shamsi was not scared of dancing in Bombay, where people knew what dance is, but she was scared of dancing in Punjab before Jats. As far as the chief minister is concerned, Mr. Channi, my take is that the most important event in this regard has already happened. The ceiling is broken. The unprecedented is precedented. And whatever we get in that direction, if it is positive, it is a bonus.
No, but it's very fascinating. Would you like to tell the story of Shamsi's father? How he converted from one religion to another religion and then come back,
Shamsi's father was his father's father was a refugee from Pakistan at the time of partition, and he was a Dalit. He was a chamar, and when he came to Punjab, and it was a Sikh majority area where he was living, the Uchapind, and he was told that Sikh religion is actually doesn't differentiate Kudrat de sab bande, and he was told in detail about it. And he said, "I want to become a Sikh. Uh, that is, my caste would be left behind." And then he goes and becomes a proper Sikh. He grows a beard and starts wearing a turban and goes to Amritsar, chakos Amrit, and does become a proper Sikh. But that is not enough as far as the caste discrimination is concerned. He was still discriminated. And he wanted to go to the main Gurdwara and said, Guru Nanak says, Kudrat de sab bande, and even Muslims are welcome. And he was told, Muslims are, you are not. You have your own Gurdwara. So, yes, religion has this problem, and I think people are conscious. People are conscious, trying to do things.
Mhm. You mentioned Uchapind. I don't think people know what Uchapind is about. Give us a brief, because this is ancient Punjab. This is the Punjab that formed us, no? And there's
Yes.
evidence of it. Quite close to your hometown.
It's quite close to Ludhiana. It's on the road to Chandigarh. It's about midway, 40 kilometers from here. Uchapind Sanghol has been a site for excavation, a major excavation site in the 60s and early 70s. And what they excavated was remnants of Harappan civilization and some very beautiful artifacts which are there on an on-site museum. They also excavated some Buddha stupas dating from the era of Kanishk. And those are there, just outside the village. There is another site in Punjab which is near Ropar, similar site, Harappan site. See, any place which has to be talked about, it is important to look at it in the context of not just recent history, but the ancient history, not just a few hundred years, but a few thousand years. And here there is this evidence. So it gave me sort of a longitudinal perspective of Punjab, not just affected by Islam and Sikhism and Hinduism, but Buddhism, which was there many hundred years in this part of the world. And the capital of the Indian capital of that empire was Mathura. It had three capitals. It was Bagram in Afghanistan, Kanishka's capital, Peshawar, which is now in Pakistan, and Mathura, which is in India. We were ruled from Mathura at that time.
How many hundred years did this Buddhism last? And what happened to it?
What happened to it was that even at that time, there was Hinduism, and it was fairly prominent and fairly popular. But over time, as the Kanishk Empire receded, the Hindus again became a majority. It lasted for several hundred years. I don't remember the exact number.
Very interesting. Yeah, but what role does the Sanghol play in the book now? because
Uh,
things happen there, no? And as we
Th-
mentioned, the
th-
dancing girl herself.
yes, the protagonist, the young Dalit girl who lived in Uchapin with her father, who became a Sikh but wasn't accepted as a proper Sikh, and who later on went back to being a Dalit. He took off his turban, started smoking again, and said, I'm fine. If I'm not being, if my caste is still an issue, then I'd rather smoke and do my thing. And so that little girl grows up there, and she's a child during the time of the excavation. And then while walking through the fields, she finds a small bronze statue of a dancing girl, and that's how she has a fascination for dancing and wanting to learn how to dance, and that shapes her story and the story of the couple. Uh, and so that is how the Uchapind figures in, and it like I said, that it brings in ancient history, uh, not just the history of the last few hundred years into the story.
No, but I saw the dancing girl also as, I mean, this is an heirloom she has stolen from the excavation, and she
Yes,
hides it. Even her father doesn't know about it. Nobody knows, actually. I don't know whether Bheem knows about it or not, her boyfriend. But it has started giving her dreams.
yes.
She gets nightmares, which is earlier thought to be epilepsy. But there is a play happening here. And to me, I hope I don't sound too off here, but I think the very structure of the dancing girl, her facial features, her, is um, from the Harappan period, of course, is symbolic of who were the people who were the important people of the Indus Valley civilization, and they are no longer the important people. Caste has come after that,
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so how does that play out in Shamsi's mind? The dreams and what happens?
Her, her passion was that she was identified with the bronze, tiny bronze statue which she had found while walking through a plowed field. And the identification in her mind was, and at times she said it, that maybe I was there 3,000 years back. I mean, it was half jokingly, but she did somewhere believe that. And she yeah, before every epileptic, so-called epileptic fit for which she was treated, before every epileptic fit, she used to see this vision. A, somebody, there was a light, and somebody was calling her out. Let's go to the dancing hall, the dancing hall, and dance there. It was consistent before every epileptic fit, but it was, considered as a part of her illness.
Mhm. But for us lay audience, please describe the term identification because we don't get it.
The identification is that when somebody, usually a young person, unconsciously starts to behave like in the style of somebody usually older, uh, without consciously knowing about it. And it is a normal phenomenon. It's a normal phenomenon in our growing up, in our socialization. We identify our teachers, we identify with our role models. That's how we grow up and develop personality. But it's not a conscious, sorry, it's not a conscious mimicking.
Yeah, and it's not an illness per se.
No, it's not an illness. It's a normal
Behavioral
process.
trait. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Coming to a more serious, I mean, I think everything is serious, but there is this line on page 121 that, I wait for that kind of moment in a book when it hits me in the solar plexus. The Operation Blue Star has just happened. and the doctor's milkman, who was his actually only contact with the reality outside. So the doctor, for the most part, lives isolated in the house. Sometimes does not like meeting patients who just anyway come to him because he's the only doctor around. The milkman comes, and milkman has been leaving milk but has not come and said hello. And the milkman has suddenly transformed into wearing his pagdi and becoming a Sikh. And to the end of that section, there's this line. He's rushing away, and the doctor sees that on the back of his cycle now, he has the Sikh symbol of the Khanda, The line is, for the first time in my life, standing there on the homeland of my ancestors, I felt excluded by the circumference of a steel circle and the swords around it. Give us a sense of how did you see the Hindu-Sikh relations change in Punjab post-84?
See, it was not the militancy before 84 which affected it so much. And it wasn't a conflict even after 84. But what did happen for some time, which I feel, is that there was a cooling off of relationship. Basically, what was, I think, happening was that it was a huge collective trauma for the Sikhs. The Operation Blue Star and the subsequent riots that broke out 3 months later all over India, including Delhi and Odisha and other places. It was at that time that for the first time, all Sikh boys who did not have long hair, they started growing long hair. They started, youngsters started wearing pagdis. The Sikhs withdrew into their identity. And they were angry. And the Hindus perceived that. And they tried to keep a distance, to give them space. Probably some were scared too. It didn't last, but it was very much there. It was palpable. That things came back to 100% normal, I'm not sure. But I do remember, I don't know to what extent, because there are no figures about that before 84, intermarriages among Hindus and Sikhs, most of them were choice marriages, were not uncommon. After that, they are not as common. So there was some lasting effect, but of a very low grade for some time, except for that circumscribed period immediately after it.
There's also, a sense of fear, a sense of, as years have passed, as justice has not happened, both sides keep feeling aggrieved. Now it plays out in vote banks, in elections, plays out as discourse in social media. And my heart breaks at the differences between the two communities.
See, fortunately for us, the differences are not, that acute among the original Punjabis. But what has also happened over the years, and this had to happen, it's a free country, people are mobile. Punjabis go out and live in Assam and Odisha and all over the country. So people from outside also, come in. And those people do not identify, most of them are not Sikhs. And those people do not identify as much as with the cause of the Sikhs or with the... So there is a difference because of reasons which, you can't stop people from coming out. They must come, they should come. But as a result, this probably has happened to some extent. And many people have come from outside and assimilated very well into Sikhism, actually. And I'm talking of many people from Eastern Europe, UP, and they have become Sikhs, some of them.
That's
Some of them are,
mostly Ludhiana in the Tajpur area,
yes,
which is
some of
huge
them,
there. Yeah.
and they speak such an authentic Punjabi. Some of them are even ragis in Gurdwaras.
Yeah.
And they recite beautifully.
Uh, of course, there is the there's another line which, when the doctor goes to meet his doctor for prescription, I mean, that other doctor says reality itself has lost contact with reality. So it becomes a kind of a hall of mirrors. No, you don't really know what is going on. All you see is reflections, and that can be quite a perplexing place. And Punjab
It
has
was.
been perplexing.
It was after partition. It was something like that. It was a very perplexing place. Uh, See, but it's not just a metaphor. Even in routine practice of psychiatrists, there are many patients who come to us who are depressed, who are paranoid, who think they might have done something wrong, and then they say, कि मेरे को पुलिस पकड़ के ले जाए. And what do we do if we tell them कि तुमने कोई गलत काम तो नहीं किया, तुम्हें क्यों पुलिस पकड़ के ले जाए? तो लेकिन उस टाइम लोग कहते थे कि मेरे पड़ोसी ने भी नहीं कुछ भी किया था, मेरा दोस्त था, वो उसको पुलिस उठा के ले गई. So yes, it is. The reality was pretty psychotic those days,
Even
and it was an everyday occurrence.
even these days, your social media is full of you showing us the psychosis of society. No.
Yes.
So, but again, coming back to police, I mean, of course, the doctor gets picked up by the police. He's one time it is because he goes to report his loss of his own car,
Yes.
and then later on, when a militant picks up the doctor, then he's tortured by. I mean, there's this beautiful uh, sort of depictions of things in the names of it, like the missing road, the gymnasium, which is basically the interrogation center. The missing road is basically it's one way, anybody goes there and gets lost. And this horror of policing in Punjab, at one place you say on page 212, the premium was not on bodies killed. Incentive was not cash but promotions. 2 ranks for 5 bodies, 3 ranks for 10 bodies, 4 ranks for 20 bodies. And we know the Gill, the Saini, the Kubiram, the sequence of these appointments. And we have seen what has been happening, with some of the top officers. I mean, of course, the atrocity level has come down, but has the police even realized what they had become, and are they trying to change their image at all, do you think, or is it still the same way? Now, like today, Mustafa has put an allegation against Captain. Now, all these were SPs at that time, right? I mean, like, so.
Yes. Yes. Well, I don't know. Has the basic approach changed? No. Have there been some cosmetic attempts? Yes. And the reason is because they are directly under politicians. And there is a sense of impunity because you're doing things for politicians on their orders, whether written or verbal, that's a different thing. But it was qualitatively different at that time. They did many things on their own. And because they see, it's also something to do with the professional capacity. They did not have the capacity to do it the right way. They did not have the training to do it the right way. They did not have the wherewithal to do it the right way. I'm not talking about the equipment. I'm just talking about the mental makeup and the professional training. Even now, how many of our police officers are actually trained in a professional interrogation? A separate course of professional interrogation, which are there world over. Our police is not really, trained there, and they're under politicians.
Are they under politicians or are politicians under them? I really, why was Sidhu resigning? I think it's a symbiotic relationship in which police has the upper hand. Forgive my saying, democracy in Punjab is not a 3+1 pillared structure. It is a one-legged horse, and that is just police.
Yeah, it is a symbiotic relationship. They get to do things they couldn't have gotten away with otherwise. They get to do a lot of things.
And did president's rule play a role here? 5 years of impunity, like together, 87 to 92, I mean, the historical reasons for Punjab's current state, I trace it back to a lot of erosion of democratic values during the militancy period.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, where has it happened that 15,000, 16,000 people disappeared and never have come back and nothing has been done about? Where else in the country? Except now it is happening.
Yeah. I think we would be heading towards the last sort of section of our talk. There would be questions, I'm sure. But there is something I found very interesting in your novel. Okay, let me ask 2 questions. Let me reserve that for the last. Would you like to talk about the deras that you talk about in the book? It's extremely funny, but it is also real. Like who was the who died under the mound, and how it became a religious site, and then how the religion of the religious site changed.
See, unfortunately, there are a reality, and they are the side effects of the both mainstream religions. People do not get what they expect from the mainstream religion. They are rejected. They are bureaucratic. They are very strictly hierarchical. Well, deras are the place where they are welcome, and they are seemingly benevolent places as far as common people are concerned. They go there. They are recognized. Their names are written down. They are not discriminated against. They are neat and clean places where they get neat and clean food. There are good schools. Some of the deras run. So anybody who is disgruntled with the mainstream religion would go there, and Dalits are disgruntled. So that is why a large number of following in these areas is from that category of people. But also these deras, not all are Dalit deras. Many of them are run by high class people, and that is the money. It's a big money.
And political power.
A lot of political power, but political power again to get more money.
Right. But it's very interesting that Bheem, who leaves the dera because of the indoctrination of the dera.
Yes.
So for him, freedom is to be driving along the canal, visiting villages. That is his sense of, and that leads to the tragedy that happens. A question on writing itself. Most novels, most writers construct stories where there is action. And there's a lot of action in the book, no doubt about it. It moves, it's a page turner. But what you're actually writing about in the psychiatric line of the novel is about inaction or depression. On page 157, you say there was a grandiosity of sorts in depression. And I'm like, it's very responsible of you. You are one of the senior most psychiatrists in the country, and you are writing fiction, and you have created a character of a psychiatrist who is spiraling downwards or whatever upwards, and the dream monologues are rich in imagery. And then the mind is unhinged for a while. I think it's a great contribution to writing itself that you did it from inside. Would you like to comment on the process? How did you get to that? How did you think of doing this?
Well, the question that I'm frequently asked is that are these accounts from real patients? No, no singular account can be from another singular real-time patient. There is a condensation of sorts. Various patients seen over time, a bit from here and a bit from that patient and a bit from still another patient, condenses to form a character. This is what happened in the previous book also. So, being a psychiatrist, yes, it was easy. Was it a copybook story of a real patient? No.
No, not that. But how did you think of developing a character like this? Where did that impetus come from?
Like I said, that it had to be somebody not perfectly normal to be doing things and to be able to watch things and talk to the people that this protagonist or the narrator did. Land inside the police station and witness those things. That it had to be, and live there for years.
So like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Bromden plays deaf and dumb to get access to how the Combine is thinking. So you're developing a character like that.
Yes.
Who can almost have a 360 view of what is going on, including itself.
Yeah, except that he is not pretending to be, ill. He's actually ill.
Yeah, I mean that's. I don't think that is the point. Really, the point is to be able to show you things which are happening in the mind of those who are actually the custodians of the society. I mean, I consider psychiatrists to be the custodians of society.
He is the writer's informer.
I hope some student picks it up for a psychological study, on this. So I have one or two more questions, but let us open the house to anybody who wants to. Indu Arora ji asks, what would happen if Deras were erased?
If Deras were erased, is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Firstly, why would somebody want to erase Deras unless people like to go there. So unless one has a good reason, good democratic legal reason, I don't see Deras should be erased that way. That mainstream religions should be more liberal and democratic. The needs for Dera would automatically go down.
Preeti asks the question, a very basic question actually, but why didn't I ask it? I think I'm just so much in the novel that I don't need to ask it. What made you write this novel? What did you want to focus on through this story?
I lived through these books. Many people did. I was not the only one. But I also, being a doctor, had an open access to the community. And it was too much. I had to write about it. It was very intense. It was very long. And I felt I had to write it. It was something to get it off one's chest, you would say, but not just that. I thought people would be interested in it.
Yeah, but did it get off your chest?
Yeah, I also feel, sorry, I'm just butting in. I also feel like, Aman, your book, which is nonfiction, and this book, which is fiction, but which touches on so many similar things. So if Aman says them in a more, data didactic kind of fashion of putting it all out there as information, you're actually fleshing out that information. So we are talking about caste politics, you're talking about Dalits, you're talking about these Vedas, you're talking about drugs, you're talking about mental health, you're talking about terrorism, you're talking about those terrible days in Punjab, you're talking about police brutality, so much, that counting of the corpses, so much of this non-fiction. I mean, there's a coalescing, is what I felt. A very powerful novel, very much worth reading. And I do wish both of you would hold it up. I don't have my copy here. But definitely something that people must pick up and buy. Aman, when we were talking about it, you said that why should we have Punjab, constantly we talk about those dark days kind of thing. Or then we talk about 84, or we talk about, partition and all these sort of huge fractures. But I still feel that the country doesn't know. And what you said, both of you, about police brutality, my father was there for a period in that time. And I know many initiatives were tried in many of those villages. Sadly enough, those initiatives don't work. It's so much easier to be brutal. I don't know. I mean, not a good thing to say, but just seems to be like that. So this novel really hit me. It was something that, I would like to read again and again, just to get so much like your book. You remember when we met in Bangalore and I had all those little chits sticking out of it. It is something like that. Just wanted to, I really recommend that people pick it up.
Doctor, there's a question that has come, and that's, I think, more about a statistic, but also an insight from you. Have you witnessed an increase in mental health illness among your patients due to militancy, directly or indirectly, and after militancy? Mr. Atinderjeet Singh is asking this question.
No, even during militancy, there was a lot of increase in psychiatric morbidity people coming to the clinics, people very afraid, people very helpless. Not everybody could move out. Some did. Many came back. Some did not. But stress was palpable. It was there, and it did have psychiatric morbidity, and there was an increase in the psychiatric clinics.
And I think the recent study 3 years back shows that Punjab has the highest number of psychiatric cases. The percentage is the highest in Punjab among all states in India. I think Kashmir might not have been mapped as well, I think. But states where militancy or extreme control of the police is there naturally become states which become vulnerable to.
We also, can I comment?
Yeah.
We also sometimes forget that addiction is a psychiatric disease. So one has to add the mental illnesses, the common mental illnesses, plus the addiction. That is the whole psychiatry.
Yeah.
There's another question from Rana Preet Gill, Dr. Rana Preet.
Answered. That is answered. I mean, what was the new Chief Minister board for Punjab? That Dr. Kala answered right in the beginning, that a glass ceiling has broken.
Mm-hmm.
Atinderjeet Singh perceived and said among Sikh, Panthik and political circles.
This is a political question. I'm not so sure. But I'll read it out. It has been perceived and said among Sikh, Panthik and political circles that the Punjabi Hindu narrative of militancy is largely the state narrative only. Well, I think that's exactly the point of the book. No? Like that's exactly what we focused on in the beginning.
No, I don't think that is true. The Punjabi Hindu narrative of militancy is the same. And the six were equal victims. The numbers of people killed, the number of people who had to leave the state, the number of people who lost the businesses were both Sikhs and Hindus. So I don't think, except that people, Hindus from outside, they wouldn't know what happened and how it happened.
Why is Punjab such a knot? Why do people from outside not get it? Exactly what Preeti was saying. What is your take on it?
See, the thing is that Punjabis, there is this theory that different races are different, and there is a logic to it. Now, coming to Punjabis, because of the geographical reasons, like we keep on saying, that Punjab was at the gate of the country, and every time the invaders came, every few years there was, this dislocation and the fight and the people getting killed, and then some people would stay back, others will go away. And after some more years, this would happen again. So it is quite possible. And then when these stressful events happen again and again and again, then there are actual DNA changes appear in the race. That's how races become different in behavior, because of what has happened to them over thousands of years. And maybe that is why Punjabis are come across as a little more aggressive. I remember somebody who came from Chennai, his son was posted here in a bank, and I called him over for tea. And he said, how do you feel? And he says, people are aggressive. I saw a road rage yesterday. It doesn't happen. So maybe that is how we come across. It has a historical basis. It is an epigenetic thing. Also, on the positive side, Punjabis are very assimilated. And that also comes from there. But because the people every few years, every 50 years, 100 years, they stayed back, and then we had to adjust to, we had to also negotiate with them, we had to assimilate with them. And maybe that is why when you go to Goa and find a 10 years old Sikh boy talking Konkani better than Goans, that is an adaptability, and maybe that is why the so-called conspicuous consumption of Punjabis. They, want to spend things on and make it very visible. Like there is this old Punjabi saying that Khada Pita Laheda Baki Ahmad Shaheda. Because there actually was an Ahmad Shah who would come every 20 years to loot and rob and take everything that people had collected. So maybe over the hundreds of years, people thought, why save at all? So these things make a difference as to the races are concerned.
Dr. Bhide, who is my doctor, is asking that did the book serve a cathartic purpose?
It did.
It did? Wow. My problems complicate after I finish writing a book. No book gives me catharsis. But tell me how. Do you feel you have laid it out for people?
To some extent, yes. Yes, I did.
Dr. Bhida's next question is, will it lend itself to stage or screen adaptation?
I don't know. I'm not going to do it myself. But I don't know. I don't even know if it is suitable for a screen adaptation, this story. Or
I think it's eminently suitable. We have spoken about it.
Well, during the conversation, I was just thinking over that I'll be reading this book and then I'll be adapting this for the stage play.
Okay.
No, I think it's quite a visual book, and I think it brings alive the place, the situation, the circumstances, and that itself plus the action is very interesting, between, how Shamsi comes into herself, and that moment is, she is successful, she's a leader and she's running the dance school and all that, but then towards the end when there is a Jat sexual attack and what she does about it, I thought that was very interesting. I am just tempted to read maybe one para or two of the book, or would Dr. Kala want to read it? I'm okay with, because we were talking yesterday, Dr. Kala and I. I mean, many people have mentioned to him about his previous book that there is a Manto kind of quality to it, And Dr. Kala was saying that, yeah, I understand it in the sense that, okay, it is about partition, it is about the previous book, Partition is alluded to in this book, but not, this is about 84 and the later years. And I said, not only that, I mean, because as soon as I started reading it, would you like to read it, Doctor, or shall I read it? Just
You
maybe
please read. Please read it.
Just the first para, or even lesser than that, but just to give a flavor of the book. It starts with, this is chapter 1. She was 16 when I saw her for the first time, lying unconscious on the examination table in my small clinic one summer night. Once again, what had woken up her dorm mates in the girls' hostel was the sound of her trying to force open the door, which was merely bolted from inside. They could hear the sound even in their sleep, despite the loud desert cooler, because she was persistent. Her eyes were open and face blank of any expression. The girls were used to her sleepwalking every few nights, and they escorted her gently back to their bed, where, as always, she murmured something about a dancing hall before lying down obediently. What followed that night frightened them, because they have never seen her like that before. Her face turned to one side like that of a broken rag doll, and her body had gone into a spasm. This could not be opened even with force, and her arms and legs thrashed, shaking the bed, after which she lay. Her body became limp, and her breathing loud and labored. When I started reading it, I immediately sensed Manto's story, Kolbo. And I think, yes, your stories are less raw than Manto's, but it's not only the events that you capture, but even the way that you show characters. That sensibility is deeper than what many have pointed out in your book, I feel personally. I would really hope that your book travels far and wide and tells people about the Punjab that most of us don't seem to know. Thank you, Dr. Kala.
Thank you, Aman.
Thank you. I would request Dr. Gurupdesh Singh sir to please conclude.
Thank you very much, both of you. I think the book has been analyzed threadbare. Amandeep, you have been very incisive in your exploration of the book, and Dr. Kala has been able to give us a very broad kind of view of the book. I'm very glad about one thing that I noticed, that we have got a lot of Dalit literature from Marathi literature, from Kannada literature, from Tamil literature. Very few books have come out from Punjab which talk about Dalits. And I think not only Dalits, this book highlights a large number of other issues which we probably saw during those torrid times, like police brutality, or the fear psychosis, or the psychological disorders that people went through. But I was more intrigued by the way Dalit story has been told. It's very unfortunate that we still have those divisions, as you call it, that probably is a kind of a vestige or a baggage that we carry from the old Hindu traditions. But I think more than that, the social dynamics are more important than the abstract, axiomatic things about religion. Religion can be good on paper, but when it comes to actual real life, I think people go through certain social dynamics, and in the process, things continue. We can see that many of the safety nets, which we thought were very good, very important, they have been lost in actual practice. I have been to, I've been to kind of, even, you're right, in our villages also there are different gurudwaras Not only here, this practice is more prominent, more rampant in other countries. In England, for example, in a small town, you could find 3 different gurdwaras, one for the Jats, one for the Ramgadiyas, and one for probably some other community like Ramdasiyas. So in a way, I think your book has been an eye-opener, and it's a very relevant book, and the right time. It has presented us the true picture of the time, and it's still relevant, many of the issues that you talked about. Thank you very much, both of you, Amandeep and Dr. Anirudh Kala, for making this book accessible to us.